Welcome back, everybody. This is Latin's Fight Picks. Today we will go over the UFC Fight Night, Craig versus Allen, that just happened this last weekend. So let's just do it like we usually do it. We'll just go straight to the board. We'll talk about what went right, what went wrong, what predictions are correct, etc. So let's start off with the first most confident pick. Talbot at minus 800, and of course he should have dominated this fight. He was set this fight was set up for him to win, but at minus 800, we had said it's possibly a parlay buster due to Aguirre was the most accredited grappler, the best grappler he's ever faced, and he could run into some problems on the ground, and Aguirre has shown some pretty good competency on the ground, even though the last fight he was in the UFC, he fought as a last minute opponent, and he was dominated by a wrestler. And of course, Aguirre took the first round from Talbot, and I'm sure anybody who was dumb enough to bet at minus 800 were sweating bullets. But Talbot, he usually does finish in the second and third round really strong, but that just goes to show, like, just because it's the most confident to win doesn't mean there's not path to victory for certain people. And that could have been the ultimate parlay buster if Aguirre could have put a little more, lasted a little longer, because he started off the first part of the second round, he started doing okay, but he was just slowly getting worn down. But if he had a little more in the gas tank to keep up the grappling to the level he did in round one, who knows what would have happened. Nevertheless, it was something we said not to bet on. So, I said just don't bet on it. It's just not worth it. And this guy hasn't been proven. This guy we haven't seen enough of. We've seen some flashes of greatness on the ground. Anything could have happened, right? This guy, he squeezed out one more round. He would have won a decision. Mind you, he did get finished. But anyways, Talbot won like he should have won. As expected, he was the better fighter, but also someone with a lot of hype behind him, and the UFC wanted him to win. Nevertheless, moving on. Alexander versus Sarah Gee. And again, parlay buster. And this one legitimately was the parlay buster. Sarah Gee, I still don't think he's that great of a fighter, but he does have KO power, and he totally took advantage of a mental mistake by Alexander when he kind of turned his back. I don't know, and he just maybe was expecting to reset, and Sergey jumped all over him and hit him with a great punch. At the beginning of the fight, Sergey landed a couple of really nice body kicks with his left leg and his right leg. Very good Muay Thai style, very powerful striking. He is at a lower weight class. He's doing better. He looked really good. And Alexander, he's not a proven commodity. Not at all. He's not proven absolutely. And then again, and he had a hard time making weight, and he got KO'd. This is high degree of confidence. He should have won. He is the better fighter. But again, unproven. There's too many variables. This is too dangerous. And again, parlay buster, stay away. And also at this minus 575, again, when you get to these odds, it's not even worth taking a chance. And in this case, Talbot won. In this case, Alexander lost. And they're at minus 800, minus 575. It's ridiculous. Anyways, the parlay buster, I avoided these two fights. I wouldn't have put them in any parlays. Moving on, Parkin. Parkin, you know what? He fought against Pose. He looked like a phenomenal striker. He looked terrible against the guy from Canada. What's his name? Let's find this guy real quick. Machado. And Machado looked terrible in the striking in his Dana White Contender Series, and he looked phenomenal in the striking against Parkin. Parkin, who looked fantastic in his short notice fight against Pogues, looked terrible in his striking against Machado. And then he ended up taking Machado down and controlling him on the ground, and Machado was supposed to be the ground guy. It totally doesn't make any sense. The fight didn't play out like I don't think anybody expected. I never expected it to play out like that. And again, in Parkin, he lost the third round. It was a close fight. You know, he was a big favorite. I really thought he could win it on the striking, but he totally didn't do it in this way I thought he would. And it just goes to show when these new guys come up, you just don't know what to expect. Like Alexander, for example, or Talbot. I mean, you don't know what to expect from these guys. And even Parkin, you know, which we thought was going to be a nice, clean striking battle, and he's going to keep it on the feet and beat Machado that way. I mean, Machado was winning the striking exchanges, straight up. If it wasn't for his takedowns, he would have lost the fight. Nevertheless, you know, high degree probability, we thought he was going to win. He did win, but not the way we thought. Moving on, Morales versus Matthews. Again, a parlay buster just because Matthews is a seasoned veteran of the game. Morales is not, but he is. He was only minus 300. He was playable. High degree of confidence. I did play him in one of my parlays. It was a risky because of Matthews, but I really thought he was the better fighter. He's fought quite a few times in the UFC. Definitely showed that he's very powerful, very fast, and he's got a really long reach that helps him out huge. It was a good fight, but yeah, Morales clearly won. I think one of the judges got it 30-27. A couple of judges got it 29-28. Morales did win it. Dominant performance. Did fantastic. Moving on, Leroy Duncan, short notice fight for Tiulin against Leroy Duncan. Leroy Duncan, he was the pick. He was a 475 favorite. Almost unplayable at that point. I think he was even a 625 favorite by the fight. He was not playable, but nevertheless, he was a high probability pick. He did win it, especially because short notice Tiulin. He only had one way to win it, which is pretty much come out guns blazing in the first round and try and knock him out. Anyways, Leroy Duncan, you know, wore him out against the fence in the first round, and as Tiulin started to fade, he came on and he ended up finishing the fight. Moving on. Ailin Perez, you know, mid-tier confidence, and she got the job done. She took the fight to the ground against Pudilova, and she took the first 2 rounds. But she did start the gas because Pudilova is a big girl. She's putting up a lot of resistance, and in the 3rd round, she actually got Perez on the ground. Perez was just kind of lying there, didn't have the energy to get back up, and Pudilova took the 3rd round. But as expected, Perez did win. She out-muscled her on the ground. And she lasted long enough to win it, to win the decision. Moving on, Ribas. Again, mid-tier probability pick. We expected Ribas to be there in the 3rd round and grind this out. She's very feisty and she's very tough. And Pinheiro's only shot chance to victory was the knockout, and she went for it in the 1st round, and she blew her load, and then she started to fade, and Ribas started to come on as the fight kept going on and on and on, and eventually Ribas finished the fight with a KO. As expected, Ribas has the better striking skills, while Pinheiro had the puncher's chance to get the KO, and Ribas, to her credit, you know, withstood those blows and kept coming, and she wore her down. It was a good showing for Ribas. Back in the weight class where she could actually, you know, probably out-muscle these girls, right? And she fought somebody actually smaller, which was not normal. But yeah, moving on. Jose Johnson, and Helliger. Anyways, I think Jose Johnson won the fight fairly decisively, but I mean, there was moments for Helliger where he had to, until the very end, he got submitted like 10 seconds before the fight ended. But Helliger did have some moments on the ground, and and on striking and on the feet, striking Jose Johnson. But the fact is, Jose Johnson, you know, he's got a flaw in his plan. When he fights from range, he's a huge, you know, it's a bantamweight. Yeah, it's bantamweight. Or featherweight. Anyways, sorry, I can't remember. But anyways, he's 6 feet tall. He's got a lot of range. When he kicks from distance, he was really dominating the fight. But when he was striking, he just does not use his hands well at range. He always has a way of ducking in and pushing forward and throwing his punch and coming in within range of the opponent. And then the opponent, of course, counter-striking and landing strikes, which is what Helliger did quite a few times. He just doesn't fight well at range with his hands. And it was quite frustrating to watch. how he would just kind of duck down, almost like a peekaboo style, and come close before he starts throwing punches. So he's within range of the opposite of his opponent's punches while he's coming in, and he is such a long, fighter that he should easily be standing at range jabbing. He does it well with his feet, but with his hands, he always dips down, leans in to throw punches, and he ends up closer than he should be. Not the best way to fight, and eventually he's going to get caught. But anyways, as expected, mid-tier confidence. We expected him to win that. He won it. It was a good decision. Brito, our first underdog, came through. Like I said, he's too strong. He's too powerful in those clinch positions, got a lot of power in his hands, and even though he was getting worn down by Pierce, he still had enough energy in the second round to submit him. And if he didn't submit him, he might have had enough energy to win that second round, because he obviously dominated. He won the first round. So he just had to win one more round, and there was no doubt Brito fades as the fight goes on. But anyways, we got Brito. He got the victory, which is good, because I'm just not a big fan of Pierce and the way he fights. Well, he's just fighting. I'm not him personally, but just his fighting style. But Brito I am a fan of, and I'm glad he's moving on, because he deserves bigger and better things. Looking forward to seeing him some more. But he got the submission choke. He's very powerful. Once he got the choke in, he's very strong. And yeah, and as expected, he's going to be able to outpower Pierce. Jordan Levitt, second underdog. Again, bet on Levitt because I thought Levitt was going to be stronger in the grappling exchanges. And if you watch the fight, he is stronger in the grappling exchanges. And any submission attempt that was attempted by Hooper, Levitt just muscled his way out of it. But Levitt did get caught in a transition. In a transition, while they were rolling, there was a split second, not a lapse in judgment, but was a split second where, Hooper got his hand free and locked in that choke. And I think Levitt, he was very confident on the ground. I didn't think he expected that. But there was that split second while they were rolling where Hooper locked that choke in, and then he didn't have the time to try grab the hands, and the hands were locked in behind his head, and he had to tap. But, Levitt looked very confident on the ground. He wasn't scared of the positions. Even looking at how they were rolling, Levitt looked like he had an answer, and no matter what Hooper did, Levitt would just be able to outmuscle his way out. If I had a chance to do it again, I would keep betting Levitt, because I really think that Levitt would have won that fight if that wasn't for that one split second move where he got that choke in while they were rolling on the ground. I think Levitt wins this fight in the end. And but nevertheless, that actually busted my parlay, because I had a parlay from parking on this one, and Levitt was actually the last parlay, because they didn't go down to these 50s, because these are the ones I said, these ones can flip to any which one you want and you wouldn't be wrong. Nevertheless, Levitt would have been huge for me. But a few other things came through, but the biggest parlay that could have had Levitt in it. I had other ones with these guys in it, and I had one with Allen with Levitt in it. So actually, Levitt's the one that broke it. So nevertheless, it was a close fight. Moving on to this one, Charles Johnson Esteban. I picked Charles Johnson. It was a coin flip fight, and it was kind of expected. I know Charles Johnson was going to fight the submission attempts. Esteban would eventually start to get tired. And about 1 minute left in the second round, Charles Johnson got back up and started landing punches. If he had gotten up even 45 seconds sooner and landed the same punches, he probably would have stolen the round with damage, because Esteban wasn't doing very much. But he got up within a minute, he poured it on, but it just wasn't enough to steal that second round. In the third round, he was pouring it on, and it looked like he could get a 10-8 round until the last maybe 20 seconds of that fight, where they were scrambling and Esteban ended up on top. And then definitely was going to be a 10-8 round. There was no chance of getting a 10-8. It's going to be a 10-9 round. No chance of him getting a 10-8. He was on the verge of getting the 10-8, whether he was going to get it or not. I'm not 100% sure, but he was starting to land frequently and powerfully. So he definitely took the third round, almost took the second. If he had gotten up, like I said, up to a minute sooner, he probably would have taken the second round. And that's how close this fight was going to be. So I kind of expected it. I went with Johnson. I thought, you know, just a little bit more from Johnson could have flipped over anyways. But Esteban won that by a close decision. Moving on. Medic versus Orlbai. And again, this is the grappler, kind of like this, grappler, striker. And I thought Medic, because of his experience, would be able to pull this off. I know Orlbai, they were saying that, oh, he can strike. You know, I mean, the way I saw it, it's just not going to play out on the feet. Orlbai has to take him to the ground. And then to the first, like, 2 minutes, Medic was kicking his ass, like strikes, kicks. Like, he was just landing on Orlbai, and Orlbai had to go to the ground and try control Medic. And then he ended up taking the first round by basically, you know, controlling him on the ground in the second half of the fight. But right off the bat, Medic was winning that round. And of course, in the second round, I think Medic just started getting tired and started to break because Orlbai took him down. He's a good wrestler, and he just held him down, and he eventually won it with a neck crank / choke. But yeah, I mean, there was a few good shots there where Medic could have even ended the fight. I mean, they were not a fight-ending sequence, but he was landing very powerfully, especially to the body, with the kicks. And yeah, I mean, I thought Medic could pull it off, but it wasn't to be. But again, it was one of those coin flip fights. Is he going to be able to put his game plan or do more damage before Orlbai does his game plan and grinds out the decision or submission? But nevertheless, this was one of those 50-50s. I could either one. I just went with the underdogs because the payouts was better just to go there. It was close. Moving on, and yeah, the one time I didn't go for the underdog, I picked Moda. Again, I expected this to be a coin flip. Is Moda going to be able to land his left hook? Or is Ogden going to be able to pull out an Ogden? And yeah, I mean, it's hard to guess which Ogden's going to show up. And Ogden showed up the way when he's supposed to. Good long jab. He's a longer fighter. He had a good jab, good leg kicks, and he took him to the ground. And Moda couldn't get his kicks off because of the way Ogden was throwing his jab and throwing the leg kick. The low leg kick, and in the end, Ogden was also threatening with a takedown, and Ogden did take him down a couple times, and he kept him down and he controlled him. So Ogden was winning the fight, but it was ruled a no contest, so it was a kind of a draw. He was the underdog, so the one time I didn't take the underdog in this coin flip of a match, the underdog did win. So there you go. These things could have gone any which way. I mean, I'm sure somebody picked it, but for me it was too risky. I had him in a parlay, a long shot parlay, but for the most part, I kept these three out of my main parlays just because of the uncertainty of everything with those fights. Moving on to the main event, Allen versus Craig. Again, huge underdog for Craig. Allen, he was my pick, but in the end, I do pick both. In one of my parlays, I'll have one of each just to see, just because of past experience. I always do that with the main event, and then I enjoy the main event instead of sweating it. But Allen, you know, dominant performance. Craig had his moments, you know, and he showed up for the fight and he did well. And but in Craig fashion, if he doesn't get the submission, he's not going to win the fight. And unfortunately, Allen got the submission on this time. But there was moments where Craig, you know, had chances, and yeah, Craig got caught in the end, and he got choked out, and that was it. Overall, it was not a bad card. I mean, these ones were the parlay busters. Everything else afterwards pretty much, you know, showed up. Levitt was the disappointment. This is the coin flips. We're still disappointing. As far as the coin flips go, I went 2 wrong out of 3. And that wasn't great, but these were the coin flips, and this one, of course, was both. So the main thing I got out of it was Levitt was the disappointment, because we would have had a good run minus the parlay busters here, which we wouldn't have played minus 800, minus 575, just because of the odds and the fact that they could have been a parlay buster. I played it from here after. because of the minus 385, minus 300, under minus 500, you know, kind of thing. So that was in my playable range. Nevertheless, Levitt was the one that kind of busted that part of the parlay. But overall, did well. It didn't do fantastic. Depending on what you took off the board and, you know, how far do you ran your parlays, or if you did bet individually. Other than that, you know, I mean, well, one right. This one was wrong, but it was right because we said stay out of it. This was right. 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 This was what was wrong. This one was the 50-50 coin flip. It was wrong. Well, leaning towards the wrong one. Leaning towards the wrong one. No contest. Leaning towards the right one. So, however we can count it. But like I said, this was a very, very tough card to call because of there's so many unknowns, so many new guys. Yeah, it was totally uncertain. But overall, it ended up pretty good, I would say. Nevertheless, thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget to hit the like button if you like the content. Hit the subscribe button if you want to be notified when the next video comes out. We will be doing it next week for December 2nd for that fight night, which will be Dariush versus Tsarukian. So that one looks like a pretty good card as well. Lots of fights. So what else? Yeah, leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know how you did. Let me know if this helped. Let me know what worked for you and what didn't. Interested to hear what everyone's got to say. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining me again. We will see you next week.